Go on, blacksmith all my life. I make stuff. My name is Ugrella Thistle, a healer, herbalist, and friends to animals. Why not? They need friends too. I have no time for nonsense. Begone before I call the guards. Oh, hey, it's you. I mean, I'm like your number one fan. I can't believe it. It's you. Wow. Oh, brilliant. Wonderful. Yes. We all need NPCs. We need them now. And so here is how. Hello and welcome to this episode of How to Be a Great GM. My name is Guy and we're looking at the only NPCs you'll ever need to make. You'll never need to make NPCs. No, you always need to make NPCs, and this is how you're going to do it. So this is, of course, it's a complete fallacy and it's a truth at the same time. I mean, it's a paradox of creativity, really. You need them, but you don't need them. Anyway, I'll get more into that in a little bit. Now, this video assumes two things. One, not all NPCs are needed to be actually NPCs, and two, those that are needed to be NPCs should then be useful to both the player and the GM, because NPCs are actually mouthpieces of you, the GM. They are the metagame master stroke, and as a creative spark, well, they should be the creative spark that kind of really pushes your game upwards into the realm of greatness. So that's where we started from, those 2 points. But it's the 1930s. It's grim. It's punk. It's a fight to keep your sanity as you struggle against the evils of a uniquely dark world. Their Kickstarter launched yesterday. There are beautiful dice involved, people. Beautiful dice, beautiful books. This is Acheron. More at the end of the video. NPCs are often overlooked as one of the critical aspects of the game. And as far as I look at it, you've got NPCs, you've got monsters, you've got rules, you have plot, and you have organization. Those are the 5 cornerstones of being a GM, as far as I'm concerned. They really are. So, I mean, yes, you could run a game without monsters, sure. But in that context, then, the monsters are just antagonistic forces. They're things that fight against the PCs. So it's just easier to call them monsters, right? Now, what are NPCs then, effectively? Now, I called them at the beginning of the video the metagame mouthpieces, the masterstroke. They really are. I mean, they're the lifeblood that's going to bring your world together. You can have fantastic descriptions. I mean, dungeon crawls can be brilliant. But without a few NPCs, they also start becoming very much the same after a while. So exploring the idea of how NPCs should work and what the different types of NPCs are is really important. But before we get to the 7 NPCs that you're ever going to need, let's discuss NPCs a little bit more. So they're the metagame mouthpiece because the players have no idea who the NPC is or what information the NPC might have, right? I mean, there's an expectation. Absolutely. An illiterate slave, for example, is never going to know the ancient mathematical formula to the dragon's riddle, right? The dwarven blacksmith isn't likely to know much about elvish cooking methods from 3,000 years ago. That's the expectation. However, because you're a great GM, you could make it work. I mean, you could make it work. But generally, the PCs won't expect it. And if this channel has taught you anything, it's that we give our players what they expect, but in different ways. Okay, so just because one NPC doesn't know something, another one might. So, for example, the blacksmith, the dwarvish blacksmith who knows nothing about elvish cooking, his sister might be a chef who specializes in elvish cooking. The slave is mute and can't speak. They're illiterate, but they can't speak. They're mute. But they could be covered in like a Rosetta Stone of text. Tattoos, tattoos all over the place. So the PCs can read that actually do have the ancient riddle tattooed upon them. Anyway, I mean, that's not the point. The idea is that NPCs can give information to the PCs in a whole bunch of different ways, but they can give a whole bunch of different types of information. They can give information that the PCs missed earlier, that they glossed over. It could be, it could be stuff to help the players run a better game. That's why it's metagame, right? So as long as it's plausible, as long as there's some kind of link, then it makes it feel more interesting. It makes it feel real. So in script writing, we actually call this a convenient history. So 6 years ago, I was a guard at the base and learned all the access codes, but now I'm just a humble fisherman. It's that kind of stuff. I mean, it's really boring if you do this all the time. If every NPC has got a history that suddenly gives them the clue for today's, adventure, that's sloppy writing, sloppy GMing. And you'll see some TV series, they use it all the time. Watch out for it. I promise you it's there. So PCs can dispute the history of an NPC. I mean, they can't really. I mean, it is what it is. If he was the guard, he was the guard. The other side of the coin is that NPCs will make your campaign feel real because they have all of this kind of history that you're making up to give all of this information. Okay, but you don't need to use all of the NPCs in the world. You don't have to get... it's about making sure that the NPCs that you are using, you're using them properly. And we want to make sure that the NPCs are doing a job, are fulfilling a function. So we can do this over time. No one spills their entire life story in a single setting, in a single sitting. I mean, the NPCs take time, and you can explore their past as they interact with the PCs, and you can grow with them. However, what must be established immediately when PCs meet an NPC is this. This is the fundamental. Every NPC should have a purpose. Now, there are precious few people on this planet who do not have something that needs to be done. It could be as mundane as, I need to sit in the park, building up courage to jump off a bridge. Oh, that went dark. It could be, I need to go shopping before it rains. It could be, I need to take over the world, or to break, or to take a break from a parent who's dying and the bedside is miserable. Wow, I was in such a good mood. Anyway, whatever the purpose, there must be one. And the purpose doesn't need to be overriding. I mean, the NPC might be pleased to talk to someone. It takes them away from thinking about their dying parent, apparently. It could be that their purpose is critical, in which case then they don't want to talk about it. Oh, I've got to get there before the sixth bell, and it's going to strike any moment, so leave me alone. So if you mix that up, you suddenly have a whole bunch of NPCs that they've got a purpose, they're going in certain directions, they're going in different directions, plus they have the ability to tell the players all kinds of information. We just have to be careful about how we do it. And this sort of brings your world to life. Okay, so just before I get to the 7 NPCs that you'll only ever need to worry about, there are some NPCs that shouldn't be NPCs. These are usually the guards, the shopkeepers, the wagon drivers, the people whom the PCs are going to interact with once or twice, but with no real intent of finding out more. Now, I think, yes, technically these are NPCs, but they're not. NPCs, I feel, are the special characters who have meaningful contributions to make to the PCs and to the players. So a word of warning, the players are going to find NPCs that you dismiss as they're just there, right? They're going to find them, and they're going to attach value to them, and they're going to choose them to being a meaningful NPC. Don't fight it. Don't say, oh no, they wander off. Let it happen. I mean, they're engaging with your world. That's what you want. So adapt the PC into one of the 7 that we're going to talk about, and then you're going to be golden. So I think that's very, very important to bear in mind. Okay, so the 7 NPCs that you will need. You need a guide. Now, this NPC will take the party from point A to point B. A sea captain, an undead gondolier, a librarian who knows his books and shows PCs things that they never knew, a fortune teller. All of these NPCs will do things that the PCs cannot do for themselves. Okay, so they'll have insight about the sea that they're traveling on. They'll have insight about the path, about the dangers up ahead. The guide NPCs are really useful in terms of moving the party forward in an easy way. Okay, so that we know what's coming up. Establishing threats and tension for the area. Oh, we must be careful. Oh, there are undead drop bears around. And then for speeding up a mundane journey, because now the PCs are not having to make survival checks and rolls and all that kind of stuff, because you've got the guide who's doing that. Now, once the guide has reached the end of the journey, they must then transform into a long-term NPC. And we'll get to what that is in a little bit. So either they transform or they leave the party to seek their own adventure. So if we look at The Lord of the Rings, Gollum was the guide. Gollum showed Frodo and Sam how to get from point A to point B. That was his function. The next type is the advancement NPC. Now, they are not a guide at all. The advancement NPC drives the plot forward and puts the PCs back on track, corrects clues that they might have missed, or helps PCs interpret the wrong details. Sometimes it's a straight-up solution. And sometimes it's a hint in the right direction. Now, there must be a cost. So, the cost could be friendship. It could be coin. So it is about fulfilling that function. Now, what it means is that it should be used as a short process. Don't invest too much time in this NPC. They must give the PCs info, lead into it, and then just be done as quick as possible. It's like the king who says, go to the mountains of the west and slay a dragon. That's an advancement NPC. Just like a jester who tells the PC secretly that the dragon dances for a royal song. Ooh. So they're advancing the plot. They're sort of building up to that. So use advancement NPCs to give out plot information, to refocus the PCs on their task, and to give out additional plot information. So Gandalf was an advancement NPC. He drove the plot forward in The Lord of the Rings. He was like, "Yo, go to Bree and then fly, you fool!" He was driving it. He was giving them all of the stuff that they needed in order to actually go on their adventure. Another one, and this is specifically for someone who reached out to me on Twitter, is the rival NPC. Now, these NPCs, they compete with the PCs, but they're not villains or henchmen or nemesis. They're not bad people necessarily. They're just rival to the party or to one of the heroes. They're the folks who push the PCs to be better. They could even be part of the PC's entourage. PC's entourage. It could be helpful. They could be friendly, but better. They're the motivator in the group, or they drive the group to fight better. So Boromir, for example, in The Lord of the Rings, he did that. He was a rival. He pointed out the flaws in the PC's thinking. He was a sounding board. That's what these guys are doing. And then there's a friendly rivalry. It's like, I've killed 20 orcs. How many have you killed? Oh, because you're fighting wrong. Use your weapons like this. That's meta game. But you see the picture? Do you see the picture? The mentor NPC. This NPC is needed as your metagame voice. So unlike the guide, who has local knowledge for the journey ahead, or the advancement NPC who's kind of pointing out the way, going, well, this is the plot, go there. The mentor NPC is the one who's giving guidance on how to do stuff. So they don't know the answer. That's important. But they provide insight in one form or another. They are your voice. This is the GM speaking, basically. A useful example, if the party keeps failing combat because they don't work together, you could have a mentor NPC saying, you lack cohesion. Only when the stones fall together does it become an avalanche. That sort of stuff, right? It's crazy world building stuff. It's super cool, but it's educating the PCs and the players at the same time. So it's really useful for that. So you use your mentor NPCs to give insight into how things should be done, or potentially could be done, to guide the players into thinking or behaving differently with their PCs, to guide the players, right, into dealing with their PCs in a different way. The mentor should never have the solution to a problem or riddle. That's not their job. It's like, oh, don't know. But seek and you will find. That's kind of, anyway. Their job is to psychologically assist the PCs and the players towards finding their own solution. Now, thinking of my Lord of the Rings analogies and that sort of thing, there were many individuals in that kind of space. They were their own sort of mentors and teachers. Gandalf wasn't a mentor. He didn't really advise. He kind of told them what to do. So that's why he's an advancement NPC. Depending on your perspective, of course. All right, the next one, the long-term NPC. Often overlooked. This is the NPC whom the party will love because they embody so many different things. They could have started out as any of the other NPC types. They could have been a guide or a mentor, but they never left the party. They evolved into this long-term role. Now, I would advise never having more than 3 long-term NPCs in the party's space at any one time. They need to have complex backgrounds. They need to have solid emotional responses, and they must invest in the PCs. They could have, they could be lovers, they could be husbands, they could be wives, they could be friends that are just there to support them, to support the players, to support the party, and to just push it all. It's the emotional reactions and bonds with the PCs. It makes the world setting seem that much more alive and cared for and real, because the NPCs are there to simulate real emotions in a fictitious game. Sam Gamgee is a long-term NPC in The Lord of the Rings. He had hopes and he had dreams, and he was there until the very, very end. He never ever overshadowed the hero. He never overshadowed Frodo, but he made sure that Frodo could be the hero that he needed to be. He made sure that was what sort of happened. So that's the long-term NPC. Now, the next one is the tricky one. It's the support NPC. Now, this NPC doesn't add to the plot. They can't guide. They can't give good advice. But they do menial tasks that makes the lives easier of the PCs from an administrative perspective. So they sharpen weapons. They repair armor. They pack baskets of food rations and fresh wine. These are the folk in the world that just like to help others. And again, that just helps make it real. So use support NPCs to speed up your game by removing mundane tasks. Oh, I've already been to the market, master, and I've repaired all of your armor and I bought all your spell components for you. Make the player aware that these tasks are being done and would have to be done if the NPC wasn't there. So Elrond is a support NPC in The Lord of the Rings. It's like, yes, come to my house, stay, sleep, drink, eat, it's fine. Need a sword? Sure, I'll reforge that broken one. Need sanctuary? Need new clothes? Elrond is here because Elrond is great. Anyway, the last type, I think it's the last type. The comic reflection NPC. So someone who's funny, who's jovial, who's super enthusiastic, but is perhaps also a little bit too headstrong and comes up with bad ideas. Kind of channel Leroy Jenkins, really. It's the murder hobo mindset. So you're using these as a mirror for the party so that they kind of go, no, that's a dumb idea. And the NPC's going, well, storming the castle from the front seems to make the most obvious sense. I mean, that's where the doors are, right? So you're using this NPC to provide some fun elements. Absolutely. It's great to laugh. But you're also using it to show the PCs the wrong way to do stuff. Merry and Pippin were exactly these characters from The Lord of the Rings. It's like, this is what happens if you don't take things seriously, and then this is how you grow. You know, they provided the light stuff. They reflected the goodness of the characters and reminded them about that sort of thing. But they did grow and they did evolve and eventually became long-term NPCs. But that's initially what they were for. So those are the 7 archetypes that exist, and they help make our stories better. They really do. And they help us to help our players learn how to not play better, but how to work together better and get rid of their frustrations and that sort of thing. So generally speaking, I will give my NPCs a role when the players start to interact with them. I won't give them all that history and all that kind of stuff. I don't need that just yet, because you never know if it's going to be an NPC or if it's just going to be a god. So you want to then have that ability to be flexible and to move around and that sort of thing. So and that allows for what happens when the PCs latch on to an NPC that you had not given any thought to. You kind of like, oh, you really like that person? Okay, cool. Well, actually, I need the party to work better together. So that person, although they're a downtrodden dog, they might have been a super general in the past, and so now that's what they're going to give advice in the form of dreams of how the PC should work together. That now become a mentor, right? So it gives you that really that strength of doing that and then driving that forward. And so I call NPCs who I don't need for a long time, NPCs that are momentary, that are brief. I don't bother about them. They don't need all of that background stuff. So don't get bogged down in trying to figure that out. NPCs that are going to last for a long time or a longish time, those are the ones that you need to put your energy into. And I think that's really something that we must be very aware of, is where do we put our energy? Anyway, it's been a long one, so I'm going to shut up now. Those are the dynamics of NPCs in my game. Those are the only NPCs I ever worry about creating. Did I miss any out? I don't think so. If I did, agree with me, disagree with me, whatever you do, hit that subscribe button and leave your comment down below. Why hit the subscribe button? Because you can, and it's free, and just touch it. Dark World Studios was our sponsor today, and they just launched a Kickstarter for a new D20-based TTRPG set in their own world, but kind of correlating to the 1930s of Earth. 1920s, 1930s of Earth. It's a dark setting, and the rules make sure to keep it that way. They've got some lovely little rules in there. The combat, it's bloody, it's violent, it's deadly. I was reading it going, what? Okay, cool. They've brought in sanity points to track how far your character's gone down the dark path, as it were. Lots of stuff. Really cool ideas, cool features. You'll know how to play this TTRPG, by the way, because it uses the D20 system. And that means that all of that learning curve is just gone, and you can just get into the setting and just... I mean, it's awesome. Anyway, it's called Acheron. It's on Kickstarter now. Links are down below. Show them some love and get ready for all that jazz. Although that was the 1920s. Well, close enough anyway. I mean, well, it's just going to be a blast. Go out there and shoot them or avoid them or watch out for the tentacles. Anyway, it's a really great Kickstarter. I do thoroughly suggest you go and check it out, and whatever time period it's set in, there's guns, there's violence, and I think it's a lot of fun. Until next time, however, I wish you and yours the very happiest of gaming.